Hi guys, Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer, ex-immigration officer, and former high school teacher, back with you again in another video tutorial on Express Entry. We've learned a little bit to this point about what Express Entry really is. However, one of the more common questions that I get as an immigration lawyer here in Canada is, do I qualify? Well, in this case, what we're really asking is, how do I qualify for the Express Entry process? Well, remember, there are two phases to this process. When we're talking about how you qualify, first it's getting into the pool. So how do you even get into the game where you're competing against the other candidates to get that magical ITA or invitation to apply? So first is meeting the minimum entry criteria to one of the 3 federal economic programs. That's step 1. And really, for this video, that's what we're going to be covering. Step 2 is how to get an invitation to apply, or increasing your score so that you're high enough to get that magical ITA. We'll cover that in the next videos. But thanks for joining me. Let's jump into it right now. And right off the bat, I'm going to clear that out, and I'm going to share my screen with you just for a second. And this time, I'm going to take you guys straight to the government's own website. So you'll remember we've talked about the fact that you must meet the minimum entry criteria for either the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which is the one you've got right here on this page, the Canadian Experience Class, or the Federal Skilled Trades Program. Well, if I scroll down here, you guys will see these are the minimum requirements. So right off the bat, you have to have skilled work experience. But your skilled work experience must meet these minimum criteria. So right off the bat, it has to be in the same type of job as your primary knock. So essentially, your work experience for the eligibility purposes of the Federal Skilled Worker Program all has to be in the same knock. And I'll talk about the knock in other videos, but the National Occupational Classification System is the system that the Canadian government uses to classify all of the various jobs people do in Canada and really all over the world. So it has to be in the same type of job. So if you've got experience 6 months as a welder and then another 6 months as a pipe fitter, you'll see that don't work, or that will not work for the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So the same job, it has to be within the last 10 years. It can't be volunteer or unpaid internships. Guys, it has to be paid. Now, the Canadian government doesn't really care how much you're paid, but it has to be some form of compensation. And remember, we'll get into this later, but you have to be able to prove these things, guys. So if someone's paying you cash, you're going to have to find ways to prove that you actually were paid, if there's no paper trail that you can actually produce to the government. Next, it has to be, as you can see up here, skilled work experience. Well, what is skilled work experience? This comes back to this knock right here. It is skill type 0, A, or B of the 2016 National Occupational Classification System. And I could go, maybe we'll just click on it. This is the National Occupational Classification System. So you can try and go and search for your positions. But this basically breaks down what these are. 0 are management jobs. Level A is professional jobs. You can see these: doctors, dentists, architects. And level B is technical jobs. So that gives you a little bit of an idea what types of positions would qualify for Express Entry. The lower skill level ones here won't work. And you just have to find your position within the National Occupational Classification System, which I will show you later on in future videos. Remember, guys, I can't teach everything all at once. All right. Now, here's the next part. It has to be at least 1 year. Well, what does 1 year mean? Well, 1 year, guys, means 1 year. Not 10 months, not 11 months, 1 year. And the reason I say that is because 1 year also means 1,560, right here, hours total. If you reach that 1,560 early, in other words, you work crazy hours and you make 1,560 hours within 10 months, sorry, it has to be at least 1 year. Okay. So 1,560 hours is the minimum. You have to have worked at least 30 hours per week. That's what they consider to be full-time work experience. And it must be continuous. So you can't have any breaks. And remember, I'm just going to scroll up here. This is for the Federal Skilled Worker Program. The other programs might be different, such as the Canadian Experience class. So you'll have to pay attention when I get to that. But this is just for all of you who are overseas with no connection to Canada. Well, generally speaking, you go through this program. All right. So then we scroll back down here where we were. Let's continue. So it has to be continuous. So no breaks. And well, there's always an exception to everything, guys. And we'll talk about that later. So full-time, what is a full-time job? You can see right here, 30 hours a week for 12 months. You can also work an equal amount in part-time. So you can accumulate it at 15 hours per week, continuously working for 24 months. Or you can have full-time that is made up by working at more than one job. So you could work for 2 different employers, 15 hours each during the week, formulating your 30 hours per week. And you can see here at more than one job. So there's a number of different ways that you can meet it. So if you don't have this, guys, you're not even getting through the gate. You can't even submit your profile into the pool. But there are a few other things that you have to understand about this Federal Skilled Worker Program, which we have right here. The next is language. So in order to qualify, if you're going through the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you need to have at least a Canadian language benchmark of 7. The reality is, for the purposes of the International English Language Testing Service, IELTS, or the Canadian version, CELPIP, that minimum amount that you have there, guys, that is likely not going to even give you enough points to receive that ITA. This might be the minimum for getting into the pool, but trust me, you're going to need more like a CLB 9 if you want to qualify from outside of Canada. So just keep that in mind. So language, education, yes, you need to make sure all of your education is assessed. Excuse me. By one of the educational credential assessment agencies. They have to be one of these approved agencies. So if you've got foreign work experience, it actually has to be assessed. But guys, this is the most important. So pay close attention. How can you tell I've done a few videos now? My voice is getting a little bit dry. Anyways, this is the most important part of right up here, the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So you need your minimum work experience of 1 year in the last 10 years, full-time, skilled. But here's what the Federal Skilled Worker Program is really about. The selection factors. You have to meet the pass mark of 67 points out of a total of 100 points in this selection grid in order to meet the minimum entry criteria for the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So remember, this doesn't have anything to do with the comprehensive ranking system. This is just meeting the minimum eligibility requirements of the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So what are these? Let's take a look at them. And you'll see here that these selection factors, excuse me, I've kind of got a little bit of a sore throat. These selection factors that we have here mirror a lot what is being assessed under the comprehensive ranking system. But for the purposes of this program, remember, these are assessed differently than the comprehensive ranking system, so don't confuse them. You have to meet this requirement first, a pass mark of 67, then you go into the pool. Then at that stage, you have the ability to be ranked with a CRS score against everybody else that's in the pool. But you're not even getting in the pool unless you meet the pass mark, which is, you can see right here at the bottom of my screen, 67 points. So let's see how the points are tabulated. And remember, it's out of 100. Okay? So you can have a maximum of 28 points for language skills, and they break it down exactly what you need to have. You'll also see here that depending upon where you're getting your points from, you need to have at least a CLB 7. Okay? And we won't worry about second official languages, but I'm just going to cover the basics here for you. So you can see you get points, a maximum of 24 points for your first language, which for most of you is going to be English. Some it might be French. Then you get points for education, up to 25 points. And you can go through and you can assess how many points are assigned to what? A doctoral level, 25 points. So you're just going to go through and you're going to assess and see how many points that you would receive under these selection criteria. Experience, that's work experience, 15 points. Same thing, full-time, paid. You can see it's the same thing that was described in the previous screen. That's what skilled work experience, what's required to be eligible, and you can get up to 15 points depending on how many years of foreign skilled work experience you have. And guys, I could get into so much detail here, but I'm going to try to keep this high level so that you get a general overview and then you can dive in deep. You can, if you're just so confused, you can always book a consult with me, or you can consider subscribing to my Express Entry Do-It-Yourself guide. All of that will give you all of your answers immediately right on the spot. So consider those. You can click on those links that are all around here this video. Okay, scrolling down, you can see years of skilled work experience. 1 year, you get 9 points. Up to a maximum of 6 or more is the 15. So that's how you accumulate those points. There's points for age. And you can see here, unlike the comprehensive ranking system, you get maximum points up to 12 points, you can see here, if you are between the ages of 18 and 35. Whereas with the comprehensive ranking system, once you hit age 30, you start to lose points. All right? And then arranged employment. If you have a job in Canada and you're working in Canada, or you have a job offer from a Canadian company, you can get up to 10 points for that. And then they have their own version of points called adaptability, which is a combination of different things that will just give you extra bonus points. Like your spouse has really good English, or you've studied in Canada, or your spouse has studied in Canada, or you worked in Canada. All of these things can help you to get extra points, including relatives in Canada. And I will point out here that you only get points under the comprehensive ranking system for a sibling in Canada. But under the federal skilled worker program, you get points if you have any of these family members: parent, grandparent, child, grandchild. You can see aunt, uncle, sibling, niece, nephew. So it's much more broad. But this, guys, is just to get into the pool. So if I scroll back here, and I'm going to back up, remember, this is just the minimum requirements to qualify through the federal skilled worker program. All right. And I could go into more details. Yes, if you don't have a job offer, if you don't have a connection from Canada, or you're not working in Canada, then you also have to have a certain level of funds to support yourself, to get yourself established. But I'm not going to go into too much detail there. So you can see how long it took to explain what is required for you to be eligible to meet the minimum entry criteria under the federal skilled worker program. But we're not done here, because this is just one program. Now, I do this one first because it's the one that's probably going to be the most important for all of you guys who do not have a connection from Canada. You're going to be going through this program. But if you are in Canada and you're working in Canada, here's what you've got. It's the Canadian Experience class. And it's just like the name says, you have Canadian experience. So at least 12 months of work experience in Canada. And in this case, it's in the last 3 years. It has to be full-time or an equal amount in part-time. And you have to have been working legally in Canada. So you can't be illegally working and meet the minimum language requirements. So I'm not going to go into too much detail with this, but if you're in Canada, you've got at least a year of skilled work experience and your language meets at least the bare minimum. Let's see. We'll just go down here quickly. We know what skilled work experience is, so we're not going to cross over that one. But when it comes to your language ability, if you are working in a skilled 0 or A level job under the 2016 NOC, you need to have a minimum of CLB 7. If you are working in a trade level position or a technical position, skill level B, then all you need is a CLB 7 to qualify. So remember, that's different than the federal skilled worker program where you had to have a 7 across the board. Okay, so there's obviously perks if you're already here working in Canada. One thing I will point out with the Canadian Experience class, when you're looking at the minimum entry criteria here, nowhere does it say that your work experience has to be continuous. In fact, you can have over a period of 3 years, like it says here, pieces of skilled work experience with different companies in different jobs. As long as they're all skilled, you can combine all of those to form 1 year. So it's not based on anything continuous. I also want to point out here that if you are a full-time student working in Canada, none of the work experience that you gained while you were on your study permit will count. And also, you need to understand that if you're self-employed and your self-employment is in Canada, you can't count that towards the Canadian experience class. You can count self-employment under the federal skilled worker program. So if you're a dentist or another professional who had their own office abroad, you can definitely count that experience, but not working in Canada. And if you're a full-time student, while you're also working overseas, you can count that for the federal skilled worker program, but not for this one, folks. So that work experience doesn't count. All right, so there is the Canadian experience class. All right, now let's jump to the last one, which is very uncommon. And I'm just going to zip through this because most of you won't. But if you do have experience in a skilled trade, a welder, a pipe fitter, an electrician, a carpenter, those skills, then this is a separate program just for you. Why? Because generally you don't have a master's or a PhD. And in many cases, your English may not be quite as high. But this program is designed to help skilled trade people immigrate to Canada through express entry. So here's the minimum requirements. 1, you can't live in Quebec. So that's right off the bat. You're not eligible if you intend to live in Quebec. You must meet the required levels in English or French. So what are the language requirements? Well, let's click on here, and then we're going to scroll down to the Federal Skilled Trade Program. So you can see that it's even lower than the Canadian Experience class in some cases. Now, your NOC code will be a NOC B, as you can see here, but the minimum CLB for speaking and listening is 5. The minimum, and this is the Canadian language benchmark. If you took your IELTS test, there is a conversion table that you can use to convert it to the Canadian language benchmark. If you took your test from within Canada under the CELPIP or in the Philippines or the UAE, where the CELPIP test is also offered, then whatever your CELPIP score is, that is the CLB. If you get a 5 in speaking on the CELPIP, it's a 5 CLB. And reading and writing, all you need is a 4. So that's a huge advantage for people who have skilled trades experience abroad. All right. So as you can see, guys, that is basically the foundation of eligibility. If you want to be able to qualify to get your profile submitted into the express entry pool, you must meet one of the eligibility, the eligibility criteria for one of those programs. All right. So that's how it works. And we're just talking about getting into the pool, guys. We're not talking at all about how to increase your chances to receive that magical ITA or to increase your comprehensive ranking system score. In fact, you guys don't even know what that is. So guess what I'm going to teach you in the next video? You guessed it. I'm going to explain how the comprehensive ranking system works. All right, guys, that's it for today. That's it for this little training session, which was a little bit longer than I wanted, but there's a lot to it. And I really wanted you to understand. So all of those people who think you just submit your profile in and the comprehensive ranking system is the only thing that matters, woohoo! You know more than they do because you first have to meet the minimum entry criteria of one of the programs. If you do that, then you can submit your profile into the express entry pool. Thanks for listening. If you want to get answers faster than I'm feeding them out to you, like I always say, you can always click down here or up here or over there, wherever it is, to book a consult with me immediately and I can answer your questions. Or don't forget, you can always subscribe to the Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide to Doing It Yourself. I'll talk about that more later. Anyways, take care, guys, and we'll see you in the next installment of this awesome little training session on Express Entry. Take care.